if you're the business owner and you're taking all the risk and you're putting up with all the misery of building a business, at some point there should be something coming back to you. Now, will your quality of life suffer a little bit in the process? Absolutely. Does your mental space get crowded with all kinds of obligations? Absolutely. If you love the game of entrepreneurship, is it worth it? Absolutely. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business of Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're on YouTube land, and certainly welcome to you if you're on TikTok Live. It's something neat we've been doing lately, and hopefully it's bringing some value and really getting some, helping some of you guys and gals with your contracting business get some traction. We're always trying to give value, and so before we get started, a little bit of quick housekeeping: like and subscribe, tick the bell, all that sort of stuff. Share this, program and podcast and video if you know someone that might benefit from it. We'd really appreciate it. And certainly don't be afraid to give us a bit of a pat in the back if you think we're doing an okay job and helping you out. That really is my oxygen. It keeps me pretty pumped when I know that, people are getting some benefit from doing, maybe executing off the back of some of the things that we talk about. So that's awesome. All right. So today, I think, what we want to do is, as a business owner, and I'm going to assume, I talk to a lot of general contractors. I deal with a lot of subcontractors, but I think in essence, I'm talking to business owners or people that maybe want to get out of their position where they're at the moment and become a business owner. And so it's all fairly relevant no matter what position you're in. And so, I was sort of motivated because I had a quick chat about some challenges I was having in the business. I had a quick chat with the old man, which is what you do. And it's good to still have him around. And, we talked about some of the challenges that we might be facing in business. And, he made one comment to me, and I'm going to use that as a title of this episode: higher the levels, the bigger the devils. And I thought that is absolutely so accurate. So, I sometimes think, well, I'm going to really create efficiencies within my business, and I'm going to organize myself in such a way that, my life is going to be easy, which is kind of the opposite of what I just started out saying. And that, I think we just think about that, well, I'm going to get a bigger business and therefore I'm going to make more money and I'm going to spend more time sitting on the beach. Now, I think there's a part of that is correct, and there's definitely a very small percentage of business owners that actually enjoy that end result for sure. But as contractors, I'm not sure how many GCs or subs or, that have really cracked that nut. And so I think what I want to do is a bit of an awareness episode that brings your attention to the fact that, as you go up the levels, as you increase the size of your business or, increase the amount of employees or team that you have and the amount of clients that you have, of course, that now enlarges your vendor community and your subcontractor community. All of a sudden, you're going to find yourself with more plates spinning on sticks, and therefore you're going to find yourself, your mindset, not your mindset, but your mental capacity is going to be challenged. So this is why I often talk about leadership too. It's the speed of the leader determines speed of the pack. And so if you're struggling at the level you're at, what you might need to consider is just some consolidation rather than expansion. So let's get cracking. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover a few of these things, which I think is the idea is to try and reconcile against higher the levels, the bigger the devils, is to try and reconcile some things that might actually make our life a bit easier. There's no guarantees around this. There's some things that I might talk about today that you're not going to understand how that actually, aligns itself with, more efficiency within the business, giving you more lifestyle because leverage, using tools gives you more lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera. But we're just going to cover off, I would say it's a bit of a smorgasbord, right? So you might know some, none, all. I don't know about what I'm going to chat about real quick. You might have heard me talk about some of this stuff before. Great. But certainly, you've got to make sure that you've got some of these or all of these, if possible, really ticked off in your understanding at least. You might not have a deep understanding of what's going on in a micro sense, but you'll go, I recognize that concept or that fundamental or that principle, and I've got to go, actually, Max, I've got to go and investigate that a little bit more because I don't actually know the micro detail and how that does actually affect my business, or I've never been made aware of that. So that's sort of where we're going right now. So it looks like I've got scribble all over the place here. Looks like I've got 9 points. And we'll just start at the top and we'll sort of see if we can't help you guys solidify. And I think a lot of the thing too is, I don't know about you, but, I think there was Gary Vaynerchuk's book. What's the last one he's got out? 12 and a half, I think it's called. And is that what it's called? Geez, I hope I haven't got that wrong. Anyway, I listened to that book twice, audio book, and listened to it twice. I don't think I've ever read a book. I might have read How to Win Friends and Influence People a couple of times, but I just sometimes find like there's some podcasts that I've actually, the same episode I've listened to over and over again, and you might identify with that as well. And so what you're going to hear here, it might be a process of re-listening and relearning some of these points and then doing your own investigations as well. But let's get cracking. Look, you heard me talk about this one a little bit. Know your break-even point. Guys and gals, you've got to know what your business costs you to run, because I'm just knowing that actually gives you some peace of mind. And we talk about, giving our clients peace of mind, and they want to know the fixed contract value like we do. They want to know what's included, what's in the specifications, schedule, and they want to know when it's completed. Those three things really do give them a high level of security. And because they like that, because they're humans, and of course, because of that, they're prepared to pay more money than perhaps what they would on a cost-plus arrangement if they're just dollar-oriented. So, I think for you to get your peace of mind, you need to know in micro detail, down to the last dime, what your business takes to run. That way you can then calculate, right, so how much work do I need to do? Now, if you're a subcontractor and you're on the tools, it's easy. It's like, right, I get 3 or 4 contracts from GCs and they give me, that they're each worth $4,000 a piece. I'm doing 12 grand, my overheads and my running costs from my vehicle and insurances and phone, etc., because you're not employing anyone and you trade from home. So your overheads are pretty minimal. Your overheads might be 3.5 grand or something like that, including the vehicle payment and insurance. So, you can quickly do a mathematics in your head as to working out, what does my business cost to run? And that's really typical for all of us when we start out very small, one-to-one, because you can do the mental mathematics. Now, I was talking to one of my guys last week, and we're going to get talking about this really quickly later on, where we want to understand what the equity position in your business is. Now, we have just talked about that, and you can do that fairly quickly if you're running quite a small revenue business. The challenge is a lot of small revenue business operators want to go big, and then what they do is they go big, they use all of the systems that they had when they were small, and they wonder why when they go big they fail. So what we're trying to talk to our group about is to take on the maturity that is required to run a larger business and the systems therein, and implement that thought process and the systems in a small business, so they get used to the routine and their muscle memory gets on point and they're very well rehearsed, and they're thinking, boy, I do this so quickly because I've only got 2 jobs on the go at once as general contractors. And then, of course, as the business grows, you've already got those things ingrained in your thought process and in your day-to-day operation, that as you get bigger, you can start handling bigger amounts of money. That's what I'm talking about. So what we're saying is get really familiar with metrics. We talk about data-driven decision-making. We want to know that we're going to, buy this piece of equipment off the back of, understanding that we can accommodate that between our revenue and our fixed expenses, and, some of that gross profit can be utilized. So just you really today, if I urge you to do one thing, think one thing away, nail down on a spreadsheet. And I don't promote spreadsheets massively, but in this case, you can do a real quick spreadsheet to keep track. And every time you go and take on something else, whether it's just a $15 subscription, that's got to go in there as well. So you want to keep tracking those fixed expenses, and you want to know what your break-even point is, because then you can calculate what revenue you've got to generate. All right. Part number 2, or stage number 2, point number 2, marketing and website design. Look, we are currently recording our 97th episode right here, right now. And again, welcome to everyone in TikTok land. If you're in there and you're having a bit of a listen, looking forward to getting your questions at the end of this podcast. So, come the 100th podcast, we've got a special guest coming in. And, I'm really going to drill down. He's from a massive marketing agency in New York. You may have heard of the company that he works for. And we will slowly start promoting that podcast coming up. But in our 100th, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into marketing as it relates to general contracting. And hopefully that jam session that I have with Joe Quattrone is going to really prove to be a really enlightening experience. And so that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So not this Thursday, not the next Thursday, but the next Thursday. So There's a couple of weeks away, but it'll be so worth the wait, and we're going to double down on the marketing. But, I know a little bit about, what we're doing. We've currently got 8 general contractors that we're providing leads to, that we're helping develop, high-performance building companies. And so we've got to feed all of these guys and gals with inquiry. And so, there's a lot of stages. It's not just a case of, well, I'm going to go and pay for a sponsored ad on Facebook. It's okay, but it's not going to really give you any traction. So, persistence and consistency. I messed that up in one previous video, I remember. Persistence and consistency is what you need when it comes to marketing. You also need to understand what type of work you're going for and who your client, your target market is. What is your preferred client profile? So the marketing side of things, I think it definitely starts with you've got to have this awareness of what you don't know. That old saying that you don't know what you don't know, as it relates to marketing is super important. Now, I was racing go-karts on the weekend, and I was talking to some guys about, their general contracting business, and they're just like, I'm not into paperwork, and I'm not into marketing, and I'm not into social media, and I don't do Facebook. And you know what? That's cool. That's cool. But on the flip side, they're not saying to me, I want to build $1 million building company either. So, this is where, some of the guys and gals that are watching this right now, they might just go, well, yeah, that's me. And, if your dream isn't, you don't have an aspiration to develop a multi-million dollar, building company, then you're off the hook, you're okay. But I think if you have that attitude and you still want to build $1 million plus business, you're going to really find it super difficult, because it's basically impossible. So, the marketing thing is, you got to define the marketing message that suits your target market or your preferred client profile or your client avatar. You really got to understand that, patterns and behaviors are a thing. And this is where, I've never done billboards. I've done newspaper, I've done radio. We've got vehicle wraps on all of our trucks. But the thing with the radio and the vehicle wraps and the billboards is I get no data. I don't even get any impressions. I get nothing. In some cases, some people hear us on the radio, when we used to advertise, they would go home and Google, because Smith & Sons are super easy to understand or remember. And then they will say on their inquiry form that they found us through Google. And it's not till later where we actually pick up on the fact that they actually heard our radio ad on the way home from work and then Googled us. So, it's not a lot of accurate data that you can derive from some of those. And they're a little bit overpriced. That's the biggest downer of that side of thing, is that sort of marketing, or that marketing medium, can be overpriced. But in our neck of the woods, I can drive down the highway to a location and there'd be 30 billboards. So, this is just one man's opinion. If billboards work for you, knock yourself out, fill your boots, get after it. But I'm pretty sure it's a $1,200 to $1,500 a month. And there's I think it could be in at least a 6 or 9 month contract. And anyway, the shorter the contract, the higher the per month cost would be anyway. So we were looking at 12 months for that. So it's a pretty massive cost. And so I think then your marketing and your web design have got to go hand in hand. So no point in having really good, voiceovers on the radio or billboard, graphics or whatever. And then you go to your website and it's this clunky, rickety old thing that's 10 years old that has really got some fairly generic vanilla verbiage on there. It's got to be very inviting. And as I said before, on the website, the piece de resistance on our website is no doubt the video testimonials from the clients. We really appreciate our clientele that go out of their way and really put their neck on the line, because it's not the easiest thing to look into this camera and talk about your experience. But, I think they're just really good, quality individuals that go, yeah, I'm happy to share about my experience to help somebody else. And we really do appreciate that. It's kind of our own in-house little rant or rave. Rant and rave? Rave. Mostly rave. Occasionally there's a rant. We're not perfect. But, so that's where I think on the website, and obviously we've got a chat bot on there, which you can, grab a hold of and submit a really quick inquiry, just a question if you might have it. So we're trying to think about, and we apply a lot of empathy both in our marketing and our web design to reduce the friction. We're not saying it's perfect. But again, you got to make sure that it's mobile friendly, because I think, 3/4 of the time people are mostly on their cell phones or on iPads or things like that. And so you've got to think about that. And of course, the website design that we use, or designer, or whatever you want to call it, it has the option to basically look at the desktop version and look at the mobile device version, so you can actually look at how it feels and how it looks on a both of those platforms or mediums or devices. So that's super important as well. So marketing and website design. Right. Number 3, paid to quote. This one I love to jam around because I get some of the questions that I get are like, that's impossible. We can never do that. And a story that I tell is, I had one of our franchise general contractors in here, and he'd been in the game for 35 plus years, never made one single dollar for quoting. Not one. And I'm telling you, he's only been with us now for probably 8 or 10 months. And he's tens of thousands of dollars worth of revenue being generated out of our, what we call our quantity takeoff service. And there's an episode on that. And I don't know that we've got that on hand, but it's there is definitely a podcast where I've talked about how to get paid to quote. And so just on that really quick, what you've got to do is you can't just go out there and say, well, I'll max it out because you get paid to quote. So next phone call, right. To give you a quote, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, it's going to cost you X amount of dough. You just can't do that. When I go back to marketing and website design, people can actually go and investigate. And of course, we're across all the social, digital platforms. So we're easy to find. The marketing message for our retail is very consistent. And then the website is very low friction. We've been very empathetic, and we want to make sure that because our preferred target, our preferred client profile is between 50 and 75. So they're not absolute ninjas on the computer. We understand that. So we try and make it as easy as possible. Getting paid to quote it's a bit of a, you've got to finesse that deal. So to get started, I want you to think about if you're going to go out there and say, yeah, sure. Because I'm telling you, and you've heard me say this before, your knowledge and experience is worth something, granted. But now you've actually got to do a little bit of a micro marketing side of things and understand what your pitch is and how you're going to demonstrate value if you are going to get paid to quote. So, I think that what we do is we talk about, we have the video testimonials on the website. We do fixed price. We let them know what the inclusions are going to be, and we've got a project duration or completion date. So all of those things, but to get them that security, the gate we've got to go through is the quantity takeoff service, essentially the quoting process. Now, as you all know, to get a quote takes a shit ton of work. So why is it that you're doing it for free? Because that's what everybody else does. And as I've said before, that's a pretty shit business development, ethos. So what I want you to do is just stand still for a second and go, okay, so if my knowledge and experience is worth something, how is it that I go and demonstrate that value so I can monetize, for want of a better term? Now, a little bit of some side notes to paid to quote. The reason we do that is because our knowledge and experience is worth something. The second thing is that if we are successful in demonstrating value, to which point the client agrees to go ahead with us in that regard, some of the work that I do is not going to be covered hour for hour. However, a lot of the QTS payments that are made do. And so that's good. If it takes you 30 to 50 hours to do a quote and you're charging $2,500 for a QTS because it's a $500,000 renovation, then at that point, it's fair to say that you're actually going to cover 50 hours, at $50 an hour for your time, which is not bad. Now, that's a good thing. But really what I want you to think about is these next two things. One is that if the client has invested with you and has paid you for a quote, sir, madam, you better make sure you deliver. Because if you fail to do that, they will crucify you. You've got to not just talk about value and demonstrate it audibly. Now you've got to step up and you've got to demonstrate that very categorically and very, very openly and very obviously, okay? They've got to be very satisfied when you sit down with them to do the proposal presentation and you map out and you've got all picture details in your specifications. You've got a very well-read document that outlines, what's included as far as the specifications is concerned. So you can't just kind of sit down and one page it and go, there you go. And they're like, that's what I paid for. That's what's going to happen. Now, is there work? You might have done a one page, and they can't see the value. Remember, it's about perception. Perception is stronger than truth. Some people, they perceive bigger as better. When they're not necessarily that's the truth, but it is a common perception. So the other thing with getting paid to quote or getting the money for that service, and like I said, we call it a quantity takeoff service, is that when what they've done is by investing in you that little bit amount of money. So let's say we were to do a kitchen, it might only cost the clients between $500 and $1,000 for that QTS. Now, if that's the case, that that might be what that's just done is if they've transacted with you at that level, that shows an element of trust. For them to have handed off that cash to you, all of a sudden they're going, okay, you seem like a good guy. I can see the value. We trust you. Here's a check for $500 or $1,000 or whatever the case may be. And then the other thing is, the final thing is there that, in that process, when they do transact, those folks or clients that transact with you at that low level, around the $500 or $1,000 mark, it's more likely that they will transact with you at the higher level for the full contract. And so, I think there's some good options there for you to consider about how you're going to reconfigure. And, this is not something I've had guys in Smith & Sons that had just refused to do that for 2 years. And they finally got over the whatever and went and give it a crack and cracked that nut. And all of a sudden they're bragging about how good it is to work for that sort of client, because odds on is clients who aren't primarily budget oriented or focused, more quality oriented and focused, they're actually a better client to work for. So, they got a lot less stress involved, in the whole process, because they've got the maturity level to understand the power of trust. You've just got to make sure that you live up to their expectations. And so dealing with clients is about, setting boundaries, managing expectations. So it's in the high finesse world. It's a very much a people-oriented business. That's why a lot of GCs, and you might know this, you'll struggle to maintain really good communications with your clients because you're out there busy picking up materials, organising guys, dealing with clients that are already under construction. And then you've got to go, I've got to get back and do sales, and I've got to get that quote out, and I've got to ask for those RFQs or those requests for quotations because I've got to get the next price together because I've got to keep the boys busy in 3 months when we run out of work. Like, I feel it. I know it. I see it. I understand it. So this is why we're trying, as the business gets bigger, the higher the levels, the bigger the devils. And so, it's a really interesting time. It's all about business development. And this is why we want to develop high-performance businesses, but we want to make sure that we do it from a fairly solid standpoint where we do go through those expansion zones, and then we go into the consolidation where we're going, right, we just got to make sure everything's buttoned up for a moment before we go into our next expansion. And, in some cases, you might have to only wait a month before you go for another stage of expansion. But in some cases, you might have to wait 12 months. I don't know what the figure is. It's all got to do with your assessment. And this is why we go back to where we started. We look at the data tells us a story, and we make decisions as far as business development goes off the back of that data. It's really simple. There should be no guesswork in your business. And so you just need to make sure that you're extracting the data so you know in real time, what your business is actually doing. So that was paid to quote. Now, number 4 here is confirm your markup percentage. I see too much, and this is a classic. It's like, well, I don't know. So I've got stuff going out here on, TikTok lives and stuff all over TikTok and, doing podcasts and YouTube. And, common questions are, Max, what do I do? What sort of markup am I applying? And I've got comments to respond to on TikTok. And that was one of them about markup percentage. Well, again, so if you know what your numbers, so go back to point 1 where we know our break-even point, you'll be able to figure out how much work you've got to do, what that work costs you, and then how much you've got to mark up to ensure that those projects that you complete on a monthly or quarterly basis, what that's actually giving you in the way of gross profit to be able to feed your business and keep the lights on. And I'm not talking about building any profit, but definitely that's what we've got to go as well. So, part of covering your costs is one thing, but you've got to be creating, profit because and we're going to talk about that in a second. Otherwise, your business is never going to grow. What you're going to start doing is spending money that's in your bank account that's not yours. And there's a problem. And there's a way that you can understand the difference between what is in that bank account, in that cash operating account, what is yours, and what is actually, what I would call a liability or what you've got to pay back out to subs and suppliers. All right, so confirm your markup percentage. And I think as a rule, most part we're doing, I think 45% is what we're marking up on our renos. And so, I think you can do a little bit more as, the way materials and gas and all kinds of living expenses are increasing. Maybe we should be shooting for more like 50%. And if you're doing cost plus at 15% right now, that is a massive jump for you. So what you might have to do is, the first thing I would urge you to go from cost plus to fixed price, because cost plus is very much your commodity. Fixed price is where now this is my service. And so what we want clients to do is compare our service and our quote to our competitors. And so, it gives us a massive or distinct advantage when we've got other general contractors in the regions where we have Smith & Sons operators, and they're basically all on cost plus and all that sort of jazz. And then we're we're on fixed price. Immediately, there's a point of separation. Clients want the peace of mind and security. The data they're given by a cost-plus contractor, it may not be reliable because they know that the contractor's got an open-ended agreement as such to just keep charging them the cost and the management fee as long as the job is underway. So, it's really important that, you understand that your markup percentage inside of a fixed price, yes, there's risk associated, but there's also the opportunity once you fix that number as far as a cost, if you can be below that cost, let's say you had to spend $10,000 on lumber and it actually only cost you $8,000 in lumber, well, your gross profit has increased. You don't have that opportunity when it comes to, working on cost plus arrangements. So markup percentage is stuck at cost plus. There's nothing you can do about it. Fixed price, you definitely can massage that up and down depending on, your own personal situation, but I've just explained my recommendations there. Right, point number 5, project back costing. Obviously, we want to know macro understanding, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, the macro understanding of where the business is at financially. But really what I want to know is I want to compare what I did in my estimate to win that job versus what happened in real life. In other words, we're comparing the actual spend on the day in real life to what it was that I sat there 3 months ago and maybe did that estimate to ascertain what I think an appropriate budget for that project was going to be. And the only way you can do that is to back cost. Now, if you've got a few guys working for you in-house, you're going to need to, every week, to account for their 40 hours or whatever hours was worked, you're going to need work orders, internal documents where you can apply. Now, if you had one team member working on 3 jobs in that week, then he's going to be issued with 3 work orders, 1 for each project. You can then add that to the budget that you've got in your software. And of course, I'm not going to talk about that today, but Build Exact is what we use. And you can then basically reconcile, or you can apply those actual spends. You can compare those with what's in your budget. That's a simple case. Now, the other thing is to keep track of that too. Work orders is one for your in-house labor. Purchase orders is subs and suppliers. And the reason we generate the purchase orders is so that the computer system can throw that actual cost against or into the budget. And then the computer does the automatic comparisons. It'll tell you whether there's an overage or whether there's an under. It'll tell you how far you progress through the job as far as your invoicing side of things. So there's a bit of a dashboard there that can help you. That's job to job. That really doesn't do anything, as far as my overall equity position in the company. We'll talk about that in a couple of points. Matter of fact, that is my next point, project back costing. Point number 6. And this is something that I've spent a lot of time sort of diving into and just wanting to understand, is because I know that when I had a building company with Smith & Sons, I did a townhouse development. I think one of the biggest checks that I got was about $330,000. And, honestly, I mean, that was so freaky. I just thought that is such a big chunk of money. I was naturally I was very minimalistic, and you might have heard me say this before. Up until 12 months ago, I drove a 20-year-old Ford F-150 pickup, because I am a little bit frugal. I don't buy much clothes. I probably wear clothes that some of my casual stuff that I've been wearing for 10 years. It's just because it's all, I've got 6 kids too, so that's a little bit of a noose around my neck. You've got to keep it pretty lean. But, I think that there's my mindset as a builder is that, we've got to make sure that we don't go and see that $330,000 in the bank account and think we can nick off and, buy a brand new truck cash or a new boat or whatever. And so, the work in progress accounting is something that, I've got a full-time bookkeeper, and, we've chatted about this, and I said, we've got to understand the equity position of all of our general contractors, because what can happen is they can find themselves with big jobs coming through with a lot of revenue that flows out from those, and it really does cover up your negative cash position. And for general contractors to nail down, if I said to you, based on the amount of money that's in your account, how much do you owe right now? I don't care if, last month, as of the month, we're just about the month of August, we're about to finish off. We want to know, what debts did you, accrue in the month of August? And so, there's work in progress accounting, which we really want to double down and really, that's something that's a little bit more technical. And I might have to do a separate video on work in progress. But what we want to understand is what's the level of liability in my business. In other words, if you put a check in your account, and this is the problem. For me, I might have got that check on, let's say the 28th, 29th, whatever today's date is of the month, and I bank that check and it clears, and then I show a really high profit margin for the month of August, and then of course I get into the month of September, and then I start writing checks, and all of a sudden my P&L shows that I made a massive loss, and so it's this up and down thing, which again, when I started out talking about know your break-even point, know what your fixed expenses are, there's just some peace in knowing where you're up to. And of course, I think what we want to then pay attention to, especially in the work in progress accounting, is we can look at trends. So I might get to the end of the month and say, well, you've got 330,000. By the end of August, 350,000 went in your bank account, and then I might be able to ascertain in the first couple of days of the next month really what you spent on subcontractors and what you spent on suppliers, and then we compare that to your income, and we can quickly work out, what your liability position is. And I think too many times guys and gals will have such a moment in time where they've got so much work coming through, they've got a lot of revenue buzzing in, but they're not keeping an eye on their liability. And that's why after 3 to 5 years, building companies will just go, where's the money gone? And because they never kept track. And conversely, they're saying that they made all this money and they're paying tax on it unnecessarily. So look, work in progress accounting, jump on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of things. That's going to take a little while for you to get your head around. And I guarantee you, if you ask your bookkeeper, maybe even your accountant about how do I do, double entry bookkeeping, then they're going to go, like, why would you want to do that? And so there's going to be some questions. So definitely try and get some education around that. But it's super important that you go down that path. Now, if you're doing that right, you can then, when we talk about operational capital, so point number 7 is operational capital. This is the money that you're going to use and reinvest in the business to grab another piece of equipment, to, put another, human as part of the management team or whatever the case may be. And you're happy to invest that back in the business. But at least again, data-driven decision-making. At least what your parameters are for expenditure and reinvesting in the business. If I said to you, you've got 150 grand in your bank, but there's 150,000 worth of liability, then you can't go and buy that vehicle, or you can't go and buy that piece of equipment, because now you're going to be in a negative cash position. So it's super interesting that what you can do is, if you're looking at your work in progress accounting every month, what you can see is trends starting to form, and you can always confirm your cash position at the end of, which for that month. Normally it's the first or second of the next month, but that snapshot in time, you'll be able to go, bang, at that moment in time, that's the money that I had in the bank account. That was my level of liability, and this is what was mine. And you can actually see what trajectory, whether it's a positive trajectory or negative trajectory. And so, for guys that have never really dug down into financial metrics at all, this will turn your hair green. It'll tip you upside down. Just what I want you to do is, now that I've made you aware of it and I put a bit of a stone in your shoe, don't go stressing out too much. Just now understand your vulnerability or your weakness, and maybe start to look at some education. And again, you can get me on max@businessforbuilders.ca. Flick me an email, and I can, just with one question at a time. Don't go and bombard me, because I just won't be able to get back to you if you do. But let me see if I can sort of help you out, and we can maybe refer you to some videos and things like that might help explain it. Right, so operational capital, you need to be generating that, otherwise you'll never grow a business. If you do, you'll be growing a business, you'll be spending money on things that you can't afford, and so it'll be a little flash in the pan. You'll have some little bit of traction going forward, and then all of a sudden, because you've basically overcapitalized the business, you haven't got the money now to spend the money on the liabilities that are coming in, and then the thing will fail after 6 to 12 months. So you really want to understand your cash position, whether it's positive or negative. If it is negative, now you've got to work on turning that negative trajectory around to a positive until you hit that break-even point where you understand exactly where you're in and what your position is, and then you can start. And this is why it takes so much maturity to develop a business, because it's not just a matter of going out there and winning a job and knocking nails into wood. Like, it's just, you do need that CFO, that chief financial officer, that person with their financial hat on, to give you the good oil. And I know us builders, we're like, nah, she be right, mate. I got this, and you ain't got it. It's just a matter of time. Or you'll go 10 years and go, why am I not actually moving ahead here? And then why am I paying all this tax? Or why do I not make any money? What's going on? And so, that's certainly, we want to know, because the operational capital, if you've grown the business to a certain level, what your operational capital actually becomes is total gross profit that you could pay yourself a dividend or, pay yourself a couple $100,000 a year and do it safely, because that's what a business should do. If you're the business owner and you're taking all the risk and you're putting up with all the misery of building a business, at some point there should be something coming back to you. Now, will your quality of life suffer a little bit in the process? Absolutely. Does your mental space get crowded with all kinds of obligations? Absolutely. If you love the game of entrepreneurship, is it worth it? Absolutely. And so that's what you've got to reconcile. Don't try and do it because it looks good and it's entertaining to you, because you're watching me talk about entrepreneurship in the construction business and you think, I want to do that, but you're really just a good second in command, and you don't want to hang the noose around your neck and the box under your feet as the business owner. So be calculated in where you commit yourself. But operational capital needs to be created. Otherwise, we cannot develop a business. Okay, point number 8, recruitment and team building. This is by far the trickiest. Well, I wouldn't say it's by far the trickiest, actually. It's probably one of the big challenges, because you're dealing with people and humans, and things have organic nature that you can't sort of understand sometimes. And so, I think a lot of the time, I guess I've talked about hire quickly, fire quickly. Fire quickly, kindly. That's what I want to, the caveat on that. I think that you're not a charity, so you can't afford to, be the nice guy or nice gal. But then conversely, it doesn't give you the right to be an arsehole either. I think, just if you've got to let people go because they're not living up to the standard, or they're not a fit, or they're just not learning the way that you want them to learn, I think, having them on the team is not an option anymore. They got to go. But I think you can do that professionally. You don't have to do that with too much confrontation. But I think on the plus side, one thing that we're starting to subscribe to now is that we're always hiring. We just have to keep that no different when we're doing retail. We've got to give ourselves plenty of choice, and we want to be in that area where we are a preferred employer, and we want to make sure that our recruitment mechanisms are always improving, and that the message that we're throwing out there to our prospective, general lead carpenters or our office admins or whatever you might need as a general contractor, it really is welcoming. And I think I talked about this on the last podcast or the live. I might have said this. We believe in having the extended medical benefits. It's a significant cost per month, but it does set you apart from the competition, because everyone else is out there screaming that it is too expensive. Now, if you've got a different business model to what's out there, what's typical, like we do, then our gross profits allow us to be able to offer our employees a little bit of those perks, which is again going to make you a preferred employer. So I think when you're talking about verbiage in ads, I mean, we use Indeed. We've investigated the option of having a recruitment company at $3,000 a month. Do it, and I never tried it, so I can't comment good or bad. It was just a shit ton of money, and for us to do that was almost I'm not sure whether that was going to be right across the board, and then we'd have to get all of our guys to chip in, and not everybody wants labor at the same time. So that was just a really difficult one to negotiate. So that came off the table pretty quickly, but there's definitely, possibilities out there. Further to recruitment, once you've got a good team and you've got an established good crew, of guys and girls on the site or in your office or both, I think team building is super important. I know that when we get new general contractors come on and join forces with Smithies, or when we, like we had a project consultant come up, we had lunch a couple of days there, and, I invite my whole team in because, we want to make sure that this new person understands the support that they have. And then all of us in the office, we understand what our responsibility is to help general contractors succeed. And so they get to see firsthand. So I'm very much, the team building program is about bringing the whole team together and just enjoying each other's company and some good food. So, I think there's other things you can do which are a little bit corporate, but, whatever works for you and your crew. And I think that's why it's so individual. And I would hate to think, if what happens if you Google team building exercises or team building, things, I mean, there'd be a massive list. So you just need a little element of creativity. I think, creativity is the variable of success. You need to be creative. You don't want things to stay, black and white, forever. It's just not cool. We've got to make sure that our workplaces are vibrant. And I think part of that too, to make sure that people actually want to work with you or stay on your team. Speed of the leader determines speed of the pack. You've got to be a visionary. You've got to really invest in your own leadership capabilities. In doing so, you'll start to understand the psychology of building a team, and therefore, anything in the way of recruitment or team building is going to come more naturally to you because you're going to understand the concept a lot better. And so, super important parts, to help you deal with the bigger devils. Like I said, higher levels, bigger devils. And so what we're trying to do is really kit up. Most of this is really mental. It's just a mental understanding, a conscious awareness of what it takes to run a building company successfully. I guarantee there's not too many guys or gals, general contractors that that are really, really knocking it out of the park where they could tap out for 3 months and head down to Mexico and sit on the beach and sip martinis watching the sun go down and still have the business be in great condition when they came back. There's not too many of those. Right, next one is brand management. And brand and reputation management. This is my last one, point number 9, brand and reputation management. And so, I'm out there racing go-karts on Saturday and Sunday. And of course, I keep an eye on the phone because I can't help myself and in between races. And, there's people on there that are, giving us daps on TikTok, and I really appreciate the love. And there's, then there's other folks out there that are calling Smith & Sons, who, they look like they're in the building industry, because just note to self, people, we can sometimes see what you're into, but this fella, he was calling us a fly-by-night operation, so that's super interesting. When you've got over 100 franchise general contractors in 3 countries, and we've been doing it 14 years this year, I'm pretty sure that moves us away from being a fly-by-nighter. So, I think, all the time, and look, I can't say no for the other guy. I can't control what that other person says. I'm secure in what I'm doing and where I'm taking the business, and the crew that I'm, running with, and the group of GCs that have entrusted us with the responsibility of helping them develop a high performance business. And so there's a limitation. So I think that's the thing too. If we get too anxious over that and too stressed over that, I think what you're doing is you're applying too much emotion to something that you have no control over. And so it's not going to fix that problem, and it's only going to suck out the good energy. So look at it for what it is, address it the most positive way. And, I'm no different than anyone else. I'll find myself typing stuff up and I'm like, no, delete. I can't go bagging him out and tell him to kiss my ass and things like that. I've got to handle it professionally. And a lot of the time, these people don't know they're actually talking to the CEO. But it's my responsibility to manage the reputation of the brand. And so, there's some things for you that you'll have to manage your brand and your reputation in the city or the town that you live in. And I'm telling you, it is never, ever convenient. Brand and reputation management is always super inconvenient. The reason is because if you quickly post or reply with something, odds on is it's not going to be as professional as you would have liked it to be when you look at it later. And that's because when your emotions go up, your ability to make good decisions and type good text goes down. And so, I think sometimes it's good to just look at that, as a comment and put it down and just chew it over for a little bit and then go back in with more strategic, categoric approach. But it's super important that brand and reputation management done because, as much as we love social media, we can get such, penetration and such brand awareness. The downside with that is we can get destroyed if we're not careful. And we have got to work so hard. We've got so much positive going on, but it only takes a little bit of negative. And so, it's super tricky to be able to sort of put that together. And on top of all that, this is why I'm saying you're running a building company, and then what I've got to do, brand and reputation management, what's that about? So look, you have your hands full as a general contractor. And I've said it before, running a general contracting business is brutal. I mean, it's a deadly game. So, look, if you've got any questions, flick them to me one at a time, max@businessforbuilders.ca. And just one question at a time. I'll shoot you back some help if I can, and I'll make contact with you either way. I know I've got a bunch of comments on TikTok that I've got to get back to from the weekend, so bear with me. I will probably get to those today. But right now I'm going to wrap up the podcast. So hope that helps. Go build a kick-ass business. I will see you on the next episode. Cheers.